The valet at the Rosewood Country Club barely glanced at my 10-year-old Subaru before dismissing me entirely. I could practically see his thoughts. Lost delivery driver. But I wasn't there to deliver anything. I was meeting my mother-in-law, Constance Ashford-Pemberton, for our monthly lunch. The lunch where she'd remind me, in 1,000 subtle ways, that I wasn't good enough for her son. "Ma'am, the service entrance is around back." The valet called as I headed toward the main doors. "I'm meeting Mrs. Pemberton for lunch," I replied, keeping my voice steady. His expression shifted to poorly concealed amusement. "Of course. Park anywhere in the far lot." The Rosewood Country Club was everything you'd expect from old money: marble columns, manicured lawns that probably cost more to maintain than most people's salaries, and an atmosphere so thick with privilege you could choke on it. I'd been here exactly 3 times in the 5 years since marrying James, and each visit had been more uncomfortable than the last. I found Constance holding court at her usual table, the one with the best view of both the golf course and the main entrance, perfect for judging everyone who dared enter her domain. She was surrounded by her usual gaggle: Margaret Wheelwright, Dorothy Cunningham, and Patricia Blackstone, all women who'd inherited their wealth and their opinions in equal measure. "Olivia," Constance's voice dripped with false warmth. "How punctual." I bent to kiss her powdered cheek, catching the familiar scent of Chanel No. 5 and disappointment. "Hello, Constance." "Darling, you really must do something about your appearance," she said before I'd even sat down. "This is the Rosewood, not a shopping mall food court. Didn't James give you the allowance I suggested?" The other women tittered politely. I smoothed my simple black dress, and tailor on sale, but clean and professional. "I'm comfortable, thank you." "Comfort," Margaret sniffed, "is for the middle class." Speaking of which, Constance's eyes glinted with malicious pleasure. "I'm afraid there's been a small issue with your membership application." I paused, water glass halfway to my lips. "My membership application? Well, naturally, I submitted one on your behalf. James insists on maintaining the fiction that you belong here, so I thought." She waved a manicured hand. "But the board has concerns." "Concerns?" I set down my glass carefully. "About your background, dear. Your suitability." Constance pulled out an official-looking letter. "This is quite embarrassing, but they've requested additional financial documentation. Proof that you can maintain the standards expected of Rosewood members." Dorothy leaned forward conspiratorially. "It's the new board. They're being very strict about keeping out the wrong element." "The wrong element," I repeated slowly. "You understand, don't you?" Patricia added with fake sympathy. "The club has a certain reputation to maintain. We can't have just anyone walking through these doors." I looked around the dining room, at the oil portraits of former presidents, the crystal chandeliers I'd personally selected from an estate sale in Venice, the mahogany panels I'd had restored by craftsmen from Maine. Every detail, every carefully chosen element of this room held a memory for me. Not that they knew it. "Perhaps," Constance continued, "it would be better if you didn't attempt to join. Save yourself the embarrassment of a formal rejection. I could arrange for you to be my permanent guest, when appropriate, of course." "When appropriate?" I couldn't help but ask. "Well, not for the charity gala next month, or the members' Christmas party, or any of the important events, naturally, but perhaps for the occasional Tuesday lunch." The waiter approached with our menus. I noticed his slight double-take when he saw me, the quick straightening of his posture. "Mrs. Blackwell," he murmured, just quietly enough that my table companions didn't catch it. I gave him the tiniest shake of my head. "Not yet. This is all James's fault," Constance sighed dramatically. "I raised him to marry within his circle. But he always was prone to experiments." "Experiments," I echoed, thinking of how James had pursued me relentlessly when we met at that charity auction. How he'd fallen in love not with Olivia Blackwell, heiress and philanthropist, but with Liv, the woman in jeans and a ponytail who was cataloging donations in the back room. "Remember when he dated that artist?" Margaret added helpfully. "At least she had the sense to know she didn't belong." "Olivia's different," Constance said, and for a moment I thought she might defend me. "She doesn't seem to understand her place. Just last week, she suggested changes to the club's charity auction, as if her little nonprofit experience qualifies her to opinions about Rosewood traditions. My little nonprofit, the Blackwell Foundation, which had quietly funded half the charitable initiatives in the state for the past decade. But they didn't know about that. They only knew about the small arts program I ran publicly, my cover for maintaining anonymity. "Ladies," I said quietly, What exactly are the standards you're so concerned about maintaining? Constance's eyes narrowed. Breeding. Education. Wealth that goes back generations, not just a lucky stock option or lottery ticket. People who understand that membership at Rosewood isn't just about writing a check. It's about belonging to a legacy. A legacy, I repeated, my fingers tracing the edge of the linen napkin. The same napkins I'd insisted on when I redesigned the dining room 15 years ago. Egyptian cotton, 1,200 thread count, with the subtle RCC monogram I'd sketched myself. This club has standards, Constance hissed, leaning forward. Standards that have been maintained for over a century. We don't just let anyone. Mrs. Pemberton. The voice cut through Constance's tirade like a sword through silk. Richard Worthington III, the club's president, appeared at our table looking slightly panicked. Behind him, I noticed the general manager, 2 board members, and what looked suspiciously like the entire executive committee. Richard, Constance preened, clearly assuming he'd come to support her position. We were just discussing the membership situation. Mrs. Blackwell, he interrupted, turning to me with an expression of near reverence. I cannot believe. I just received the call from our headquarters. You're here. You're actually here. The dining room had gone silent. Every eye was on our table. Constance's confident smile wavered. Richard, what are you? Ladies, he continued, his voice carrying across the room. Are you aware that you're dining with Olivia Blackwell? The Olivia Blackwell who established the Rosewood Trust? Who personally funded the club's restoration after the fire of 2008? Who has been, for the past 15 years, our anonymous founding benefactor? I watched the color drain from Constance's face as Richard continued, each word another nail in the coffin of her carefully constructed superiority. Mrs. Blackwell owns the land this club sits on. She holds the master lease. She is, quite literally, the reason Rosewood exists in its current form. He turned to me, and I saw genuine emotion in his eyes. When my father was president, you saved us from bankruptcy. You asked for nothing in return except that we maintain the club's charitable mission. That's impossible, Margaret whispered. She drives a Subaru. By choice, I said softly. It's reliable and understated. Rather like my approach to philanthropy. But you let me all these years, Constance's voice was strangled. All these years, I let you show me exactly who you are, I replied calmly. A woman so concerned with appearances that you never bothered to look beneath the surface. So obsessed with pedigree that you missed the irony of lecturing Olivia Blackwell about the Blackwell family legacy. The Blackwell family, Dorothy repeated faintly. The railroad Blackwells? The ones who built half of Chicago. My great-great-grandfather, I confirmed. Though I prefer to focus on building communities rather than railroad monopolies. Richard cleared his throat. Mrs. Blackwell, about your membership application. I never submitted one, I interrupted gently. I've been a member since I turned 21. Membership number 001, actually. I simply chose not to activate it. But why? Patricia burst out. Why pretend? Why let her? Because, I said, looking directly at my mother-in-law, I wanted to know if the woman my husband loved would ever love me for who I am, not what I own. I wanted to know if there was any chance of building a real relationship. Constance's perfectly lipsticked mouth opened and closed soundlessly. In her Hermes purse, I could see the corner of her membership card slowly slipping toward her soup bowl, as if even it wanted to distance itself from her. I need some air, she finally managed, standing abruptly. The membership card completed its journey, landing with a small splash in her vichyssoise. As she fled the dining room, her society friends trailing behind her like confused ducklings, Richard turned to me apologetically. Mrs. Blackwell, I'm mortified. If we'd known you were being treated this way. You weren't supposed to know, I assured him. That was the point. But Richard? About the board's new membership standards? Yes. Perhaps it's time we revisited what suitable really means. Character over bank accounts. Kindness over pedigree. Actions over appearances. He nodded eagerly. Of course. Whatever you think best. After he left, I sat alone at the table, contemplating the unfinished lunches and abandoned water glasses. My phone buzzed, a text from James. Heard you had lunch with Mother. How bad was it? I looked around the dining room, my dining room, in a sense, and smiled. Illuminating, I typed back. Your mother finally learned about my background. She found out about your MBA from Harvard? No, darling. The other background. My phone immediately rang. Liv, what did you do? I stopped pretending to be someone I'm not, I said simply. And I let your mother's membership card fall in her soup. Her membership card doesn't just fall, wait. How do you know it fell in her soup? I was there when it happened. Gravity's funny that way. Olivia Blackwell. My husband's voice was a mixture of exasperation and awe. Are you telling me my mother just found out that you own Rosewood? Own the land, hold the trust, saved it from bankruptcy, I corrected. But yes. And you let her lecture you about standards? For 5 years. I wanted her to love me for me, not for my great-great-grandfather's railroad fortune. James was quiet for a moment. And now I think it's time to stop caring what Constance Ashford-Pemberton thinks and start focusing on what we're going to do with the club. I'm thinking of opening membership to scholarship recipients, young professionals, people who are building legacies instead of just inheriting them. She'll have a heart attack. She'll adapt, I said firmly. Or she'll find another club. One that doesn't belong to her daughter-in-law. Later that evening, as James and I sat on our deck, our modest deck behind our modest house that Constance had always sniffed at, he asked the question I'd been waiting for. Why didn't you tell me? About Rosewood, I mean. I knew about the family money, but not this. I thought about it, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Because I fell in love with you in that back room, cataloging donations in jeans and sneakers. And you fell in love with me, not Olivia Blackwell of the Chicago Blackwells. Just live. I wanted to keep that as long as possible. But letting my mother treat you that way. Your mother showed me who she really is. That's valuable information. I took his hand. Besides, did you see her face when Richard announced who I was? James started laughing. Dad said she came home, poured herself a very large brandy, and locked herself in her study. He could hear her on the phone trying to find out everything about the Blackwell Family Trust. She's probably discovering right about now that I also own the building her favorite boutique is in, and the gallery where she's on the board. And the live, James interrupted, grinning. Exactly how much of the city do you own? Enough, I said, smiling back. Enough to ensure that character counts for more than cash, and kindness matters more than connections. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but I recognized the tone immediately. Olivia, we need to talk. See. I showed it to James. Think she's ready to see me as more than an embarrassment? I think she's ready to see you as exactly what you are, he said. A Blackwell who built this place. I typed back. Tuesday. Lunch. Same table. Your membership card should be dry by then. As the stars began to appear overhead, I thought about standards, the ones we inherit, the ones we create, and the ones that actually matter. Tomorrow, the Rosewood Country Club would begin a new chapter, one where worth wasn't measured in trust funds, but in trust itself. And Constance Ashford-Pemberton? Well, she'd finally have to meet the real me. The woman who'd been there all along, sitting across from her at lunch, quietly revolutionizing her world while she worried about the wrong things. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. Sometimes it's served at exactly the right temperature, on Egyptian cotton napkins, in the dining room you secretly saved, with a splash of vichyssoise for flavor.